Hello everybody, my name is Citrus, and today we are not going to be talking about Nintendo Switch Sports. You see, I was planning on doing a reaction recording thing of me trying out the game for the first time through this new online test, but there's been some new details. According to Nintendo's own site, no one is allowed to share videos, screenshots, or even any details from this playtest. What Nintendo is saying is that they wanted everyone to play the test and then just not talk about it. And as annoying as this is, I don't really want to get a copyright strike on my channel or whatever Nintendo might do, so instead, we are not going to be talking about Nintendo Switch Sports and its online test. Instead, I will be talking about a completely different sports minigame collection on Switch that just so happened to also be doing an online test. Definitely 100% a different game. We are not talking about Nintendo Switch Sports here. This is not the same game. What's the name of it? I don't know, you tell me. Anyways, with all that out of the way, let's talk about definitely not Nintendo Switch Sports. Like I said, we're not allowed to use our own footage, so enjoy this trailer of the Nintendo Switch Sports video on loop, because I love Nintendo. I'd like to start with what was actually playable in this test for not Nintendo Switch Sports, and there were only actually 3 games that were available to play: tennis, bowling, and Chambara. You also couldn't pick which one you wanted to play, which was kind of strange. You would just hit this random button and it would put you into one of the games. You also couldn't make your own character, it just had some preset ones that you could choose from, but obviously in the final game you'll actually be able to make your own avatar. And that's pretty much it. You select your avatar, you hit the random button, and be linked up with someone online to play against in one of the 3 sports. So there were 2 big things that I was worried about and wanted to see in this online test. Number 1, the controls. The original Wii Sports had fantastic controls. It felt so natural to just swing the bat or roll the bowling ball, and it was in large part due to the Wiimote's motion controls. Now, the Nintendo Switch has some perfectly fine motion controls for most games. Aiming in Breath of the Wild or Splatoon works fine, but not Nintendo Switch Sports is a different beast. I've tried bowling in other Switch games like Clubhouse games, and it felt pretty bad. It didn't really feel like you were in control and were actually rolling the ball. It kind of felt like the ball was on a set path and you would just sort of choose it by swinging your arm. It's sort of hard to describe, but it just did not feel natural, and it was one of the things I was really worried about with this new not Nintendo Switch Sports game, because if it didn't feel like Wii Sports, it would automatically be an inferior game. And so, does not Nintendo Switch Sports feel like a cheaper, inferior version of the classic game on hardware that just cannot replicate its controls? Or does it feel like that classic Wii Sports experience that we are all hoping for? And simply put, it feels like Wii Sports. Everything feels so natural, you really have full control over your motion, but at the same time, it's incredibly simple with very little instruction, just like the original. And so, with that fear out of the way, one of my biggest hangups with not Nintendo Switch Sports was out of the way. And the other big thing that I was worried about was Nintendo's online for this game. Obviously, it's no secret that online has never really been Nintendo's strong suit. They've been pretty good about it recently, but it's still a bit of a toss-up whether a game will actually have good online or if it will be bad, just depending on the game. And while I was having a few connection issues at first, after that, the online test went perfectly smoothly. Now, this was a very controlled test, and with how they were trying to hide the demo through the My Nintendo rewards program, I doubt we were actually hitting the numbers that we would see when the game launches. So while this test ran pretty well, we're gonna need to wait and see for the official release to see how well the online holds up when potentially millions of people are trying to go online all at the same time. And the last big point that I want to go to before we start talking about the individual sports themselves are the avatars. Some people have been upset that these summer camp poster looking frauds are replacing the iconic Miis. But to be honest, after playing the game for a bit, I kinda like these more. Obviously the Miis are super iconic and synonymous with Nintendo's brand, and while these new avatars are a bit generic, not gonna lie, they are still pretty expressive and cute. And you can still use your own Mii if you'd really like to, so it's really just up to your preference. I'm also just a huge sucker for character customization in any of these games, and this game seems to have some really cool clothes and shoes and all that stuff, so that sounds like a lot of fun even if we didn't get to try it out in this demo. So even if they look like Ninjala rejects, I'm pretty on board with these new characters. Alright, with that all out of the way, the first sport we're going to talk about is Chambara. Chambara is basically that one sword fighting minigame from Wii Sports Resort, but with some new stuff. You can pick from 3 swords, a normal sword, a charged sword, or dual swords. Normal swords are all-rounders, charged swords are slower but hit harder, and dual swords are fast but weak. We've seen this a million times before. You can block hits by pressing the trigger, which causes your opponent to stumble, and then you try and hit them into the water below. Other than the new swords, which I'm pretty sure are new, I don't think there's anything too different about this one compared to the Wii one. It plays pretty much exactly the same, and I would say that is a good thing. And while I was playing, I was having some fun with this one. My first match, me and my opponent were playing mind games, trying to see who was going to block when and what strike to do, and then in my second match, I got bodied in like 2 seconds. The next game I played was tennis, and I'm gonna be honest, I did not really like tennis in the original Wii Sports. Controlling multiple characters at once with one controller just never really computed with my brain, and seeing how it's the same setup here, I am still pretty shit at it. Really, there's nothing new or special at this one. It's just tennis. Hit the ball in different directions to trip up your opponent. Standard stuff. But again, I'm really impressed with the controls on this one. You can do all the same shots from the original game, but on a controller the size of a Tic Tac. That is impressive. And lastly, we have bowling, and out of this trio, bowling is probably my favorite. And I was curious how they were going to do bowling for this online test, since bowling is usually kind of a slow, drawn-out sport where it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to get through a set. And with how the matchmaking for this online test was supposed to be quick and snappy, with the test only lasting for 45 minutes, I was curious what they were going to do to make bowling work in this case. Their solution? Bowling Battle Royale. 16 players all bowling at the same time, and after each set, the bottom half of players with the lowest scores are eliminated. In terms of how it plays, it is exactly like the original Wii Sports. Much better than how Clubhouse games handle it. And this Battle Royale elimination mode is so fun. I liked bowling in the original game, but it always kind of took a long time. You would really have to be into it to try and sit down and say, yes, we are going to play bowling for like 20 minutes. Now, of course, that was more so on the actual literal sport of bowling rather than Nintendo, but here they've managed to make bowling into a much quicker and more exciting game. You have a time limit to line up your shot, and the elimination mechanic makes things much more tense than they usually would be in standard old bowling. And I got 3rd place on my first run, which I am very proud of. And so, my overall thoughts on definitely not Nintendo Switch Sports, it's exactly what it looks like. Wii Sports, but on the Switch. The controls are spot on, the slight tweaks like new swords and bowling battle royale is super fun. It's just a good time. I'm really curious how the other sports in this collection will play. Badminton, volleyball, and soccer aren't the sports I necessarily would have chosen to put into a new Wii Sports, but we'll have to see when the game comes out since they weren't in this demo. In general though, this demo has really warmed me up to this new Wii Sports. I had a lot of worries going into it, which I stated in my video on the Nintendo Direct, but they're pretty much quelled. Anyways, those are my thoughts on definitely not Nintendo Switch Sports. I know you guys probably wanted to see a video about Nintendo Switch Sports since it was coming up and it's a big topic of discussion right now. A lot of people are excited for it. But because of Nintendo, I couldn't do that, so I had to make this video about not Nintendo Switch Sports. Hope y'all can forgive me, I just didn't want to have anything happen to the channel. But with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed, click like button, subscribe. If you want to see more videos like this, comment down below. If you also did not play Nintendo Switch Sports, feel free to discuss it and talk about it and do the things that you'd normally do with a fucking game release, you goddamn geezers at Nintendo. But anyways, that wraps up this video. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you all later. Peace.